I was just like head barista coffee person. I wasn't really ever focused on roasting. My introduction to roasting was Sasha took a call, and I used to just would load up the machine and assist him. He took a call and walked out and got in his car and drove, forgetting that there was a batch of coffee in the roaster. And I'm just there looking at it, watching the temperature going up, knowing, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, is he coming back?
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Coffee Made Me Do It podcast. My name is Dario and I have the privilege of hosting this podcast as well as leading the incredible team at Bluebird Coffee Roastery. Today I sat down and had a conversation with my friend Sam Corra, Director of Coffee at Ona in Australia, the developer of the Link Coffee roaster of coffees used on the world stage by so many finalists and winners. It's hard to keep track of all of his achievements. I'm very, very fortunate to be joined by Sam. This is the one and potentially only podcast he has and will record. And I really believe you're going to love the information shared. This is Sam, and I'm really privileged to have had this conversation. I hope you enjoy it.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm so good, man. How are you doing?
Yeah, very well, thanks.
Fantastic, man. Great to have you on. Thanks for making the time.
Yeah, of course. Happy to be here.
What are you doing in France at the moment?
In France, I spend a bit of time of my year in Europe doing the European trade shows and making sure that I'm available to attend to the event and everything that's happening. I'm a little bit more international than I've been in the past, so it's nice to be able to kind of be a bit more fluid between where I am and get to see lots of wonderful people.
Amazing, man. And I'm sure visiting some cool wine farms in between.
A little bit of that. That's the reward of being in this location.
Exactly. I can only imagine. I was following your Instagram account with envy a few months ago while you guys were touring around the wine regions, and yeah, it looked amazing.
Yeah, we went up to Bordeaux with Justin from Longboard Coffee in Panama. So we did a little coffee catch up, and then also learning from the wine industry for him on some of the advantages of biodynamic farming and how we can incorporate elements into processing. So that was a really cool thing to have someone who's so highly regarded in coffee be able to connect with some of the leaders of the wine industry and see that common dialogue was a really cool experience.
That's really cool. And I think what I love most about that is how, Justin's coffee is already so world renowned and in such demand. And yet he's not sitting back and just, being content with what he's doing at the moment. He's super keen to continue learning and growing as a coffee professional.
Yeah, of course. I think that's a lesson that we all need to learn, right? We need to always be looking for the next inspiration. Otherwise, we become complacent.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. But Sam, before we get straight into it, there's so much we can get into, and I'm so keen to ask you some cool questions later on. I hope there'll be cool questions. But I think just to kick off, for our listeners who aren't familiar with your story, I was talking to someone about you this morning, and I was saying that you would probably be pretty high up on, in sport they talk about your surfer's favorite surfer, and I think that you would be like the average person's favorite coffee professional's favorite coffee professional, because you do so much for the industry and you've flipping been killing it in so many different areas for such a long time, but you don't demand the limelight and put yourself out there as much as some other coffee professionals do. So it's an absolute privilege to have you on the podcast and just to know you, man.
Can I give you a little insight?
Yeah, please, man.
Yeah. I'll give you an insight. On that point, you're the only person I've ever done a podcast for. I've always been requested, but I never do podcasts. So you get the premiere.
Dude, that's amazing. Thank you so much. I don't know what I've done to deserve that, but it's a thrill to have you on.
It was the Hugh Kelly beams.
Oh my gosh, man! Seriously, I woke up that morning with the Hugh Kelly meme of he's your prophet now, and I almost died. Like it was. I don't think I've laughed that hard for a long time, man.
Yeah. Yeah, that was how you got me. That was the hook, line, and sinker. Obviously, I started out in coffee. Uh, it's getting on 15 or 16 years now. You know, maybe even longer. I'm not too sure. I was an accident into coffee. We touched on why I love wine so much. I was supposed to be doing wine because that's what my family or my parents had worked in since I was a young kid. They were wine exporters, and I was trained to do wine and work in wineries and maybe be a wine broker or a sommelier or something back in the day. But finishing school, I was a bit of an awkward kid, and my mum thought I was needing social skills. I was a bit of a little bit on the spectrum of social engagement, where she was like, you don't have any friends, you don't know how to speak to people, and even though you're doing wine and you're doing well in that, you need to take a job where you speak to people your own age. So I took a cafe job at the local university.
Gee, straight in the deep
Not
end.
anything Yeah, not anything to really get in and do it as a profession, just to keep my mum happy. And the funny thing is, I wore the worst clothes possible: ripped jeans, a singlet top, off shoes, thinking that they'd look at me and say no, but my mum would be happy. But they looked at me being like, this guy really needs work. So they actually hired me because I looked so terrible. And then I did that, and I think the biggest thing that drew me into coffee to begin with was latte art. I think everyone has that one thing, and if you don't enjoy the taste of coffee, I understand it. I think it's a really approachable medium to entice a young person in, and I know it gets a lot of discredit maybe from when you become more into coffee, that it's useless or not important, but I think it's actually that perfect stepping stone that a lot of us started on with that. So I actually, if you want to go into some deep Sam Corra history, I have an old YouTube channel. It's called Bacco, BACCO 555888, and it was one of the first YouTube latte art channels that ever existed. A lot of people who are still in latte art today lose their mind when they realize I'm Bacco, because I made a point to realize that I'd never show my face. It's like the masked magician.
That is
And so I
incredible.
have all these latte art videos that we were like looking to create, because at that time it was like no one was really sharing how to do latte art on new tips, and I was like, look, I was really passionate about it. I was like, creating a lot of new patterns, but I didn't really have a platform to show people. So I thought YouTube was a good pattern. It's a terrible channel. I have no way to access it right at this moment. I don't even know what the login is. But if you want to have a good laugh, I encourage the listeners to go and have a watch.
I'm definitely going to link that in the
And then
description.
from that one, then I obviously took me to the competition world. So I kind of fell into the more taste-driven side of coffee because of latte art competitions. And I actually competed against Angus Mackey and Sasha Sesage in the first competition. Like, I was like their rival. We weren't this like happy family to begin with. And I really disliked them because I was a bit arrogant, a bit young. I was like 17, thinking that I was going to destroy these guys because, I was doing all these crazy patterns on YouTube that people were like raving about. And then at that particular time, I think it was 2009 or something like that, latte art still involved a 50% taste bracket. So you couldn't just pour incredible patterns on any coffee. You still needed to serve and present a coffee. And I did very well in the pattern side, but absolutely terrible on the taste side, because I just grabbed a commercial coffee. I knew nothing about roasting, nothing about origin, nothing about farming. And for me, I've always been a curiosity that if I want to do something, I really want to do it well. And I also don't just want to do it well, I want to understand it. So I think that was like this life lesson where Sasha ended up beating me that year. He was the 2009 ACT Latte Art champion. To my dismay, I came second, but it was a wake-up call that if you want to do coffee and leave the wine world, you need to understand it. So a few months later, Sasha kind of came into the cafe I was working in. tuned my machine. He's like, hey, I'm actually starting a proper roastery. We're not just doing the one cafe business. Do you want to work for me? And at that time I was like, well, Canberra's not a big city. There was not a lot of opportunity to do specialty coffee, and there wasn't really a specialty coffee market. So thought it was a great time, and I pretty much joined Ona at that time where it was really just Sasha, his wife, one technician, one cafe manager, and like a chef. There was like maybe, if you were lucky, 8 or 9 people in the company. And I was the head barista, assistant packer, roaster, technician, if I needed to, sales, driver. We were everything. I think we used to pack coffee with an ice cream bucket. Like we were a very humble starting company.
And for context for our listeners, how many people work at Ona now, roughly?
If you do the entire company with the OIG and everything, it would probably be 160, 170 staff across all the venues and wholesale. And
so you've been there for all of that.
So the professional side, I wasn't there when Sash was roasting out of a garage, but at least that initial side. When we became the first official roastery there, and I was just like head barista coffee person. I wasn't really ever focused on roasting. My introduction to roasting was Sasha took a call, and I would load up the machine and assist him. He took a call and walked out and got in his car and drove, forgetting that there was a batch of coffee in the roaster. And I'm just there looking at it, watching the temperature going up, knowing, oh shit, is he coming back? Watching the time tick away. And then I realized he's not coming back. He's forgot about this. So then I just started, I'd watched him enough to understand what he was doing that I just started doing it. And then I realized we had orders. So I, would try and load up the next batch and roast. And pretty much how I became roaster for Ona is he came back in a mad rush, maybe 45 minutes later, remembering that he had a batch of coffee and saw that it was all under control, and kind of was like, well, now this is what you do. we need to grow the business. So I remember that, like, it was a beautiful time in coffee and a terrifying time in coffee, because unlike today, everything was learning based. You didn't have, a Scott Rayo book to read or a video log to watch or any information on the internet that you could really read that would tangibly help you. Like, roast software was not a thing. Like, there was no Cropsters or roast logs or things like this. Like, that they were all things that came after. Like, the most control you had was a PID or thermocouple plugged into the roaster, and then on a hand chart you would actually log the graph and actually do the dot points together to see how the roast profile was coming together. So I think in my benefit, I spent the next part of a decade as the roaster for the company as it grew, because we made every mistake in coffee, every possible mistake. Like, I roasted a lot of terrible coffee before I ever started roasting good coffee, that allowed you to understand when you did this was the consequence. And I think that style of learning just, it's very hard in the modern day, because the expectation from the client is we want great coffee, but being able to make the mistakes and then learn from them was probably the most valuable thing that I think I'd ever taken away from coffee. And I'll put it out there, like, there was a good 7 or 8 years before we ever really started to make it known or people understanding the brand and what we were trying to do. And it was really 2015 before we ever really nailed it. And even when we nailed it with the whole competition space, we didn't even know why we nailed it. So it was then another 2 years to reassess what we'd actually done, how we'd profile that, and really establish ourselves with confidence.
That is so interesting. So that 2015 win was obviously Sasha's win at the WBC.
Yeah, correct. Like, we were always a company of competition from the start, and people use competitions for different reasons. Some of them use it for personal exposure, for, they've got an idea to present. the reason why I love competitions and what our company did is we used it as a platform for feedback and to improve and grow. I've always been a strong believer that the competition's platform's true value is what you take away from it rather than what you get from it. And you can utilize it to have your industry peers assess what you're doing, your ideas or something, and then use that to tangibly put it back into the company to create a stylistic style of roasting or an idea or a concept that is scalable. If we have things which are designed for competition, only for competition, they're kind of a little bit wasteful or useless if they cannot be then incorporated somewhere back into a commercialized form of coffee, because it's such an isolated and remote thing of coffee that we'd always try to bring it back. And as a company, we did 7 years of competing. There was even to the point in the early years that Sash, to some degree, who was like really driving the competition, and I was we'd always do every competition. You do cup taters, latte art, coffee and good spirits, barista. We'd all compete in the same of everything, because we didn't have enough competitors to make the state comps happen. That if you wanted to send someone down to nationals, everyone in the company would have to compete in every event. But we would go down to this national event, and people will laugh at this, but Ona being told, please don't come down. You guys are so bad. You'll never get better. To a point, it's really amazing, but you guys are terrible. This is the feedback that we started with. And then obviously each year, getting slowly better. And just, I think when you're told you're not good at something, it sparks an ember behind you that's like, I want to be great at this, or I want to be better. At least for Sash, that was definitely his drive. And we're both pretty competitive people. So we like a good challenge and trying to figure something out. So yeah, definitely going back to your point, it took us many years to get to 2015, many failures. But I think persistence and dedication and, desire to get better will eventually what will prevail.
That's incredible. And, you've obviously spoken about the feedback loop and how important that is in competition. And we certainly share that same viewpoint, and try and take away from success or failure, everything that we can from the judges' feedback and the other competitors' feedback and so on. But besides the feedback you guys have had over the years, I mean, you in your personal capacity have had so much influence in so many successes on the world stage, including your own second place at Brewers Cup Champs in, I think it was 2017, if I'm not mistaken. And then Matt Winton's
Can I tell you why Can I tell you why I competed? And this is something for the listeners to understand, is at the time, we as a company had been so focused on barista comp that what we realized was lacking in our own roastery is we roasted terrible filter coffee. We had no idea how to do it well. And I was like, everyone was so invested because we had that barista success that everyone wants to compete in that platform, that no one wanted to touch brewing because we knew we were bad at it. And I was like, I have no, as you said, you touched on it, I have no desire. I just want to do better things for more people to enjoy. I don't really want to do anything for myself in coffee. And the fact is, no one wanted to compete. So I was like, look, I'll do it myself. That way I'll cop the harsh feedback of how bad we are at filter roasting. And the whole goal was just to present some ideas, understand the coffees, but just understand how we can improve that space. And the first year, I knew I could roast good coffee, so I just served a French press. I'm probably the only person who's ever gone to a Brewers Cup competition and served a French press, because I'm like, I know I can roast well, but I'm a shit house brewer. I know nothing. I know nothing about coffee. So I served this coffee, and the judges were like, I think I made it to the finals. I think I came second in the state round, and I made it into the finals, the top 8 in the national round my first year, and the judges were surprised. They're like, look, your coffee was amazing, performance was great, but don't ever serve a French press, learn how to do a V60 or something. So I was like, okay, that's at least feedback. The roast was okay. I know that I can prepare a good roast. And then next feedback is you need to learn about brewing. So then that was my goal that I took away and studied. That was 2016, the first one. 2017 was just learn how to brew. And then I did, as much research, like trying to figure out, taking inspiration from others. Like one of my biggest inspirations in brewing has always been Tetsu from Japan, who was the 2016 champion. He ended up also becoming part of my campaign for a few days and just being involved with it because we actually struck a friendship. But like learn from people and take what's interesting. Like don't copycat, but just try and understand why they would do a certain method. So then obviously focused on brewing for that round. Managed to make it through to the state round as the champion, nationals, and a big surprise to me, like a story that not a lot of people know is we were dabbling in understanding water chemistry and just the impact. Because one thing I realized is a great analogy for filter brewing is it's kind of like Lego, where it's not about what you're building at the end and what you want it to be, which is important, but all the little pieces that come together and stack and have their significance. And it doesn't matter how small something may seem, it has an impact on the final result. So it's really like piecing it together bit by bit if you want a really good filter coffee is what I pretty much started to establish. So every single variable, every single detail, every single thing that we could play with, we would dabble in a little bit and try and understand in details. And one thing I started to get really into was water and water chemistry. And the year that I actually won the nationals, I stuffed up my water so bad because I made this beautiful water, which I named my waters. I called that one Chubby Rain. The reason it's called Chubby Rain is because it had a super high ppm. Like whatever the limit for the rules was, it had the maximum amount of ppm that it possibly could. And basically it's heavy water. So I called it Chubby Rain because it's fat water.
That's
but
brilliant.
Chubby Rain, essentially, I didn't have a cap. I made 15 litres at the Roastery, drove it to Melbourne. I had no way to stop it, so I covered the cap in duct tape. And obviously duct tape, the adhesive side has some aroma. And my water for the competition basically had this plastic smell to it.
Oh, man.
Terrible, offensive plastic smell. And everyone like in my team at that point was focused on barista, like I was supporting everyone. I wasn't really focusing on myself. And everyone was like, you're going to do terrible. You're going to do so badly. But I think when I'm told I'm going to do badly is when I perform my best. So anyway, surprised that year, somehow beat the amazing, Devon Long, who's one of the goats of Australian brewing and still is like number one, second place. He's been Australian champion twice, but he's been second place like 5 or 6 years in a row in the last few years, but beat him somehow. I still don't know how. And then I realized, you know what, if you're going to go to Worlds, you got to do this seriously. You got to understand it better. You can't do it cowboy style. So that's when I really went on that journey. But yeah, the only reason I ever competed was to learn. I did not compete to ever have a recognition or a title that I could put on my Instagram or anything like that. It was more just I wanted to be better. And then when I made the world stage, my goal was I have a message, I have an understanding, I've done some research. I want to put something out there that hopefully others who are more intelligent than me can look up to and take it further, or it helps them or inspires them in some way to want to do this competition and learn.
So this morning when we were chatting about teeing up this call, I actually jumped onto YouTube and I watched your set again. And so it's very fresh in my memory. Two things stood out to me. The first one is that, if I'm not mistaken, that was the first time a washed carbonic maceration coffee was used on the world stage, and it was kind of a new experimental processing at that time. And the second one is how cool, calm, and collected you were. I think the MC even asked you if you were nervous, and you said, nervous, no. Definitely very focused, though. And that really struck me as a quiet confidence.
Yeah, I think I said I'm just happy to be here at one point, and I had a bet with the team somehow I would be able to say that live with it being normal. And everyone lost it. Everyone clapped because it was just like, I'm just happy to be here was one of the slogans that we had throughout the entire competition. Whenever something was hard in practice or at Origin, I said, I'm just happy to be here, even though you're having the worst time. So I think that was a little internal joke.
That's so good.
I think that it was the first time I think that process was presented. I was kind of like still on the forefront of people doing a little bit more with whole cherry ferments, and my whole goal was like, we all have our preferences in taste, and I adore wash coffees. Like I can appreciate all coffees, like I can appreciate all wine styles, even if it's not my preferred style. I enjoy celebrating, wine as much as I do coffee. And one thing which I love is wash coffees. And the slight issue I had is in the past, there had been a tendency that to do well in competition, especially brewers, you needed a big anaerobic or fermented or heavy natural. And I was like, well, it's kind of a competition that's supposed to celebrate brewing and coffee in general. I'll only do this competition. I don't care if I come last, if I serve a coffee I truly love. I'm not going to serve a coffee that I think will be competitive. And against my team's wish, I said I'm going to serve a wash coffee. It has to be washed. And I understand I'm not silly enough that I'm going to put a coffee in there that's not competitive. I'll make it stylistically have similarities to naturals. This is why we did the processing. But it absolutely has to be a wash coffee. Otherwise, I'm not going to compete. So that's kind of why that coffee was selected. Was I was really hoping to show diversity in the platform rather than just following a mold of trend or tendency that is believed to do well. I think if we narrow down what can do well, we really close down that platform as being inspirational or that leadership iconic area that it's supposed to be, for everyone to celebrate coffee in general.
I couldn't agree more. I love that approach. We're also, as a roastery, as a team, Farney kind of enjoys his more funky fermenty coffees, but I think as a team, our style is very clean coffees. And for the last couple of competition seasons, we've really chosen clean coffees, and in South Africa they just haven't been rewarded. So now we're trying to relook at everything and perhaps look at working with Nicole and Jordan on this as well. But we're looking at a coffee that's going to get us through the national round, so that we can take a coffee we'd really, really love to the world stage. But it seems like a necessary evil for us to go big, bold, and obvious to satisfy local taste.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that I've always I have a love-hate relationship with the competition. I love what it can do for your education and learning. One thing that I dislike is when you have to fit a box. It used to be a thing that was about celebrating coffee and inspiring new developments. And if we make it that only certain styles are rewarded, then we're really limiting the potential of that platform. It really needs to be a space that celebrates everything. And the other aspect of it is looking at what it means. I will tell this honestly to all the listeners. I'm a far better brewer now than I ever was when I competed. And just because I did well in a competition is not a defining moment of myself now being someone that you should look up to for coffee knowledge. I would like to think that prior to the competition, I had the same skill set and same knowledge as I do, and I just applied it to a game essentially. And I think we just need to have a look at it it's more rewarding to look to innovate and improve coffee for the good and to create and collaborate with people than it ever is to look at the platform as I want to do well on this platform, so therefore, I become an iconic person to look up to.
That's
I just
really
think
cool.
that they're the areas where it confuses me, where I think it's misjudged that someone's done well, so therefore they're now, word is of gospel speaking that we need to worship. It's more, I think it should be looked as I would like to think that people saw me now as the past. I'm the same Sam. I never changed. I never was different. I just want coffee to be better. I want people to be able to have their best chance for themselves to develop, and use it as a development platform over a means to become more important or more influential. It's kind of the reason, like, as you mentioned, with the people I look to support, like, people I like to support are those who I believe are truly talented. They just don't have resources. I think that the biggest misconception is also, when you want to do well in these competitions, sometimes it's not so much your skill set as a coffee professional, but what you have access to, which is, another area that, like, I do it for the benefit of seeing people who are talented and deserve to, be recognized, or actually have a valid message over someone saying, I want to pay you to make me a champion. I really don't resonate with that concept of not having the skill set yet just doing it to become somebody. I feel like you're people that look up to, and it's such an important role when you become a coffee ambassador, that you should be someone of inspiration that future generations want to be inspired by what you provide and give back to the coffee industry.
That is so cool. And I think, one of the amazing benefits that's come out of competition in your more recent years has been the relationship with initially with Cafe Logic and Matt Winton, and what you guys put together at World Brewers Cup a few years ago. And then the result of that is this piece of equipment, the Link Roaster, which, having spent a bit of time with you in El Salvador and getting to understand the motivation behind the Link and the purpose that you see the Link, or the problem you see it solving, to use the competition stage to prove the technology works, and then to take it on and do amazing things with it at a producer level, I think is incredible. Can you tell us a bit of a backstory as to how that all came to be in Milan, and then what has happened with the Link Roaster since then?
Yeah, of course. As I said, I think the competition platform is a really good space to present ideas, but it's also seems to be in our industry this necessity of validation. As I said, if you put something in that space and it does well, the concept and the idea is generally celebrated that it will do well. You've seen it in the past with, Sash brought the very first distribution tool ever really used on a competition stage in 2015. Now coffee distribution is this whole industry. Hugh Kelly and Berg Wu doing the chill compound thing, and now that's becoming an industry. Matt Perger doing the EK and the, autocoma, that becoming a thing that now people are looking to and celebrating. So for me, the initial drive behind the Link was, I was really fed up and tired with the amount of money being spent on competitionists for people to do well, and this necessity that if you want to do well, you need to spend more. It was supposed to be something that was approachable for everyone, and now it's a area of the elite. So I was like, I'm always a little bit like, not anti-establishment, but I want fairness. So I was like, my goal is to use my understanding of coffee and the competition, working with, Sasha, many national champions over my years, a few, Aga, Matt, other people who have done very well in these competitions and roasting for them, use that skill set for the benefit of, I want to create a roast unit that's relatively inexpensive, or refine a roast unit that's relatively inexpensive, that will produce as good coffee to be celebrated on the world stage. And that was my initial starting goal, was quality focus. Obviously working with a few people that year and having the chance to work with Matt on the back end, roasting some of his coffees and that on that unit to refine it. I was hoping to, at some point within the first 2 or 3 years of working on that project, to be able to get a beautiful coffee that would be maybe making someone hit a world final. Obviously, we were very happy and also surprised to see that year, just such an incredible result. Obviously, that was the initiation of working with the Cafe Logic team on refining their existing, machine, how it handles the controls, the platform of the firmware, and what we want to happen, and how it will improve the roasting process and controls. But after the competition, we were like, cool, I achieved my goal of my self-satisfaction of showing that you don't need a lot of money to do well. But we also have another thing of what do we now do with this? There's already so many roasters on the market that we don't need a new roaster on the market or a different model. Like, unless it has a purpose, I don't think it should be manufactured. So I was a little bit lost for like what the advancements we had made, where they commercially fit into the industry. And then I went to Origin. I go pretty much the first 3 or 4 months of the year, generally traveling through various Latin American countries as the harvest come to do my buying. And I came to a realization that the whole competition space and producing great coffee was good, but there's a bigger area that needs to be addressed. And this is around the luxury of roasting and being able to do it well. It's not something that should be entitled to certain individuals who have the skill set and the understanding, but it's a necessity to our industry because it's such a pivotal assessment point in how we are giving feedback to a producer on the coffee and also how we are rating our companies from a buying decision, that we need to ensure that if this is such a pivotal point of a yes or no buying or a feedback decision, that what we're actually assessing in the cup is true and honest to the organic product that we're there to determine it's good, bad, or whatever feedback we want to give. And one thing I realized is current machinery as is not pro user. It needs the user to require a degree of understanding and skill set to operate it successfully, regardless of how impressive the manufacturer makes that piece of equipment or how advanced it is. It still requires the user to be good at understanding the roasting function to get a good roast. And I was like, it kind of doesn't matter how much money you spend. But then the other issue I had is even if you made a machine that was very functional for a user, it's completely unattainable for, a third of the coffee industry or 2/3 of the coffee industry who desperately require it, which is our producers. All we're doing is just furthering the gap between access to technology and resources to the people who are producing our coffee. Yet we're expecting and demanding higher quality every year. How do we ever achieve that if we're not actually focused on doing something for them? Then that gave me a purpose. I was like, well, I've got a goal now that I want to make roasting 1, more affordable, 2, more accessible, and 3, more practical. And the primary focus for me was on the producing countries who don't have the skill set, don't have the accessibility to predictive or electric roasting right now because of the affordability. And then 2, maybe have never roasted coffee, so they're entrusting their QC in that to a roast master or a lab, or they're driving 4 hours to get samples done. I was like, this is completely wrong. Like, why as an industry are we focusing on these new gadgets for the barista world or the coffee world, but we're completely ignoring this area? So my goal was to really focus on the design of the roaster and the functionality of the roaster to make it roast great quality, but be super functional and practical for those who are going to use it every day in that assessment of cupping, and make sure that anyone of any skill set could essentially create a sample that would be fair and honest to the quality of the green coffee that was put in. That was the basic thing. I'm not going to say the roaster roasts better coffee than other machines. I'm just saying the whole idea was to make a fair and honest expression for anyone of any skill set. And then obviously that journey then started out with refinements to the control, obstacles that, hadn't been tackled in roasting before, and things like altitude and air density and portability and what that actually means. And from that space, it's just continually evolved. Like, where that started to where it is now is just so much more advanced than I could ever imagine that being. But it's definitely a system that is completely usable by anyone, using data points of the green coffee to make decisions on how that coffee would roast, and using the skill set of people who work in the coffee industry and roast every day as the controlling function with the manufacturing to make sure that the unit is smart and operates. It was really that goal. And yeah, I don't want to make it a full link chat, but it's something that I'm the most proud of, what that can do for people who need it most. And I think I would encourage, if any other manufacturing brands or people involved in coffee or looking at, like, I want to make an impact, like, focus on areas of development that you see as an issue. Don't just accept that we have to tolerate this in our industry because that's just how it's always done. Question, is there a way that we can avoid this or make this better, or how can we benefit people on a greater scale? And I think also not always looking to commercialize your ideas that, you yourself win from a financial backing. Do things that leave the industry in a better place than when you started. Because there'll be a time where, I'll be too old or, not in coffee. And I hope that when I walk away from coffee and having the amazing opportunities that I've had to compete, be involved on the world stage, refine it, meet amazing manufacturers, spend all this time with amazing producers, I hope I can take that knowledge and put it into something that when I leave the coffee industry, it gives the next person up who's joining it a leg up to excel and make it better than it ever was when I was involved.
That is so cool, man. And I think, having seen the link in action and having pretty lengthy discussions about the idea behind it and the the work that you've done to get it to where it is right now, it's staggering. Honestly, my takeaway from seeing it in action was, I'd been roasting for a couple of years already by the time I bought my Akawa, and I love my Akawa, don't get me wrong, but it's definitely not a machine that just anyone could buy, turn on, and roast good coffee. There's so many factors involved with getting a profile to the point that you're actually getting a good result in the cup. And I think that, as you said earlier, when you started roasting for Ona, it took you 7 or 8 years to get to the point where you felt like you were actually producing a good quality coffee. But now a producer can purchase a link, get 15 years of your experience that has been concisely refined down to this algorithm. With a few inputs and a few batches, you can be at like a point where the coffee's tasting not as good as it can be, perhaps, but at a point where you are going to be able to judge that coffee for what it is. It's at a very fair representation, as you said earlier, of the organic product. And to produce that and to put all the work in that you have and have that mindset of making the industry better and not just profiting from it is really, really awesome. I hope to get my hands on one in the future. I'd love to introduce it into our workflow as well. Even though it's producer focused, I think there's so much scope for a roastery team to make sample roasting simpler and to also farm out the task to less experienced team members. There's so many benefits.
Yeah. I think that there's other, as I said, the project has grown beyond that initial goal. Like we did a V2 update, and that was whole around the independent competitor, the small cafe, the person who wants to change coffee service. Like there's some benefits of the unit where, let's say from a small cafe perspective, that the way in which it operates, it notably has a less present CO2 perception when you brew it straight off roast. And what this allows the opportunity is roasting is something in the past in our industry that's always been done behind the scene and in several days prior to when you actually serve the coffee. So from a consumer understanding, consumers who come into our coffee industry really don't understand where coffee comes from. I'm sure many people have had the question in a cafe where they think that coffee is picked off a tree and it doesn't go through anything else processed. It's brown on the tree. Like people don't even know, like it's for us, it seems foreign that the average consumer has that understanding. And having the opportunity to take a machine like this with the new updates that you can roast for filter, espresso, whatever you want to do, and produce a coffee in front of them, and then in 15 minutes, have them then drinking that coffee that was once green, it allows better education. We're definitely utilizing and seeing practicality in that space as well, that, it is going beyond the initial goal, that we want to also tackle those areas that it makes the understanding and the ease of use and where you can use it and how you can use it a little bit more interesting. I had a concept where I ran a pop-up where you have nothing prepared. Everything is green. The customer comes in, you introduce them to the story of the farmer. You then ask them, like, I have a goal that customer service and interaction and experience and taking the care with your clientele is the only way forward to improve their understanding. Like you would a fine cocktail bar. What do you enjoy drinking? I enjoy, citrus. I enjoy acid. I enjoy, okay, I know the coffee you want. How do you enjoy drinking this? I like this. I like this element. I like it when it's vibrant and juicy. Okay, you're going to enjoy this. And you tailor the roast approach specifically to their enjoyment, like a fine bartender would your cocktail if he's good at his craft. And then you prepare it and you let them enjoy it. And it's this completely high-end, sophisticated, almost fine dining style experience that you can now tailor specifically just for that clientele in as small as, 50 grams at a time. So therefore it's not crazy, wasteful or unachievable. But it brings this concept that for the general consumer to come to a level in specialty coffee that we want to get to, we need to be creating these prompts that makes that more refined, high-end style of coffee more accessible.
That is incredible.
So that's definitely another point of use that I want to see. And I'm definitely pushing for more and more and more of that. Like we do it at trade shows, but like more and more cafes, like managing their stock. Like you have the option to freeze coffee, but now you don't even have to freeze coffee. Like you can buy a kilo of coffee, roast to order in your cafe, and you can completely control your costing cycle and usage cycle and aging cycle based on the clientele of use, and using it, as this tool to be able to present that on demand and educate the consumer at the same time.
And you've proven that the machine is capable of being used on a commercial level with your subscription. I know it's not massive volume, but you're shipping coffee to people roasted on the link every month. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, that whole concept was it's a two-part thing. So the We Coffee concept, the idea of it is to, one, allow people to enjoy competition level coffee at home. Because as I said, the competition platform, I love it and I hate it. I hate that we spend so much time and investment in our industry to satisfy 4 to 5 people's taste buds, and no one ever gets to experience coffee of that quality. I think it's a greater achievement as our industry if baristas and roasters were focusing on celebrating that coffee to our audience, to the clientele, to the public who are curious, what is the best coffee taste like? So the goal behind that project was I want competition level coffees to be making it to home consumers who can taste something that they would never get to taste and be inspired that, wow, coffee is amazing. Because if you're only focusing all that energy on producing coffee for competitions, it's a closed circle. We're not inviting new people into our space. We're not creating the connections that we need where people want to enjoy specialty coffee to the level that we are all craving as coffee professionals. So we need to make the effort to make sure that the best of what we have is making it to people, to inspire them to ask the questions, look for more coffees, be specific on variety and producer and country and process. Like that's what we are all craving from a client, but we need to make sure that we are giving them access to the best of what we have. So that project was around limited amount of time, super fun, super cool, making sure you can access that high level coffee that would only go to competitions or focus in that space, but to home people. And then beyond that, if someone then wanted to buy it and dabble into roasting, that they had the access. Okay, let's say you buy a link or you buy a small sample roaster. The biggest issue with roasting at home is most people can't access good quality coffee. And even if they can, no one wants to sell them a couple of 100 grams. So then they end up buying 20 kilos or 15 kilos of a coffee that's going to take them 2 years to use. So the whole concept was, how about we make it accessible? You can buy it in 50 or 100 grams. You can try these incredible coffees. It's inexpensive for the experience to you because you don't have to pay, for a kilo of coffee. So yes, it is a luxury, but we all dabble in a little splurge every now and again. Like, why not get a coffee, get a profile that is going to represent it well enough, and you can understand, okay, I understand why someone would pay $1,000 a kilo for longboard coffee, because I've had a chance to roast it or taste it myself, or, Jameson Savage, Enigma, or one of those coffees, Jensen Estate or La Palma El Toucan, or some new variety from Costa Rica. Like, it allows you to enjoy it.
Exactly. That's amazing. We're moving in that direction as well as a business. We've recently bought a stronghold, which has just allowed us to, just roast on demand at very low quantities, and expand on our sort of like rare and exclusive menu, if you want to put it that way. And the feedback we've been getting from our customers has been so positive, because instead of launching, for example, the South African market from a spending perspective is very limited compared to Australia or the EU. So if we're launching a geisha at like a really high price, it's going to be difficult for us to have more than one of those coffees on our menu, because roasting at 4 or 6 kilo batch size on our drum roaster, we were having to sell through a coffee first before we could release the next one. But now, having access to a smaller machine, we can have 10 geishas on the menu at once, and there's no downside to it. And I think it just makes the user experience, the consumer experience, so much better. I think it is definitely the way forward in terms of the high end or pointy end of the specialty industry, to go smaller batch sizes, smaller bags, more accessible.
Yeah, I don't really think, thinking pro consumer, we all crave something. The only way it's going to happen is if you consciously make an effort to educate and offer opportunities for more clients to come into our world. If we want it to be, everyone compares, the wine industry has this level of understanding and consumer, why doesn't the coffee industry have this? The only way you're going to get it is by education and understanding, and allowing people to experience is everything. You allow people to experience it, and you focus on that as the priority, and things which are scalable and tangible and make a difference. And this is what I said, focusing all your energy on competition, it's wonderful, it's amazing, it's incredible, but doesn't make a big difference. If you want to make a big splash in the pond, do something that's going to make a difference and allows it to grow, not something that is so niche that someone outside of that circle, if you told them there was coffee competitions, they would be like, oh, wow, that's bizarre. They just don't understand it. But to us, it's like this big thing that we all look towards and celebrate and think everyone knows about. So it's like context. You have a bigger chance of making a bigger impact if you focus on those small things that engage consumers than you do on focusing on something that's not going to have the same level of engagement.
Absolutely. And I think for me, it's like a multifaceted sort of solution that we're looking at as an industry. The one is embracing technology to have these types of conversations, to have people like Lance Hendrick and James Hoffman putting out the incredible content they do on YouTube. And I don't know if you are seeing it as well, but I'm definitely noticing a higher, average understanding and average knowledge base across our consumer base because of these YouTube channels and so on. But then also, as you said before, giving people access to, if we're comparing coffee to wine, on any day, you can walk into tens of thousands of vineyards around the world and do a wine tasting. But how many people get to walk into a roastery and have a guided, educated coffee tasting? It's very, very rare. So there are some major gaps and so many lessons for us to learn from the wine industry as a coffee industry. And the benefit we have is that we can look to an industry that's further ahead of us and go, all right, that's worked, that hasn't. How can we take that and apply it to coffee?
Yeah. And I think that's you've hit the nail on the head with the examples you put, especially with Lance and James. They are super talented coffee professionals when it comes to their understanding, but they're making content which relates to people who don't have our level. Their communication, their languaging is very approachable to anyone that you can have a good experience. And it's not focused on niche, super specifics. It's focused on generalization. Let's do commercial coffee tasting, from James' expression. Let's try the best, whatever it is, instant coffee. And it's actually relatable because that might be what someone has an access to, and them having that information, we might look at that, I would never drink those coffees. But that's the reality of the market. Like that's people's stepping stone into our world. You know, we shouldn't ever shun or discredit or look badly against how someone enjoys their coffee, but look to educate that as that's our stepping stone, that's our starting point. And we need to then build on that to, you know, in order to curve their understanding into an area that relates to where we want to serve coffee.
Exactly.
So I think that they're doing a great job.
Yeah, I agree with you. When I saw Lance in Athens, like the biggest thing I can actually say to somebody like Lance or James is thank you, because like Starbucks, you know, has done such an amazing job of making people aware of different drink styles and filter coffee in their reserve menu. Although I don't personally want to drink that coffee every day, they've definitely made it mainstream, and we can thank them for that. And I think, you know, what Lance and James are doing often, you know, at their own expense. I know that Lance isn't exactly, you know, running his channel at a full-time or anything. He's got a full-time job, and he's putting these videos out, educating the market and doing so much to advance coffee. I think as coffee professionals benefiting from their work, we all have a huge debt of gratitude to them. In the same way that you know, the work that you've put into the link is going to allow so many people to experience coffee in a different way. It's flipping awesome. So we've definitely.
I think the nice thing on that one is just that also making sure that it's a platform to grow and that it can include more people.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think,
sorry to cut you off there.
No, not at all, man. I was gonna say, you know, we've spoken a lot to the future, and I'm definitely the type of person who lives in the future a little bit. And you know, I'm already imagining from a business perspective, you know, what we're going to be doing 5 years from now. And I'm not very good at looking backwards, but you know, having become like really good mates with Jordan and spent a lot of time with him, he and Nicole, and getting to hear some of the funny stories of the beginnings of Ona and the team dynamic. You actually touched on it earlier when you said that at the Brewers Cup you had that line, I'm just happy to be here. And it was such a great inside joke. It sounds like you guys have had countless situations like that, including what I believe to be your one and only tattoo.
Yeah. I am not someone who is adorned in tattoos. I never thought I would get one, but I'm a man of my word. If I say I'll do something, I'll do it. And it was early days, and we decided that we had a Christmas blend, and it was selling well. We had a few more kilos, and I made a stupid bet. And as you know, Jordan, if you give him a inkling of something which he wants, he will go gung-ho and rally a team behind it. And so I offered him a if they sell an X amount before this date, which is I thought unachievable, I would buy them some nice wines. And then they managed to do that, and I'm like, wow, that's, you know, relatively expensive. I'll double down if you sell twice as much in the next X amount of days. I think it was 2 days, which is completely it was an impossible task. Like, you can never do this. So I was pretty comfortable on it, but I also didn't want to buy the wine. I will let you tattoo whatever you want on my body. And of course, I gave him that egg, and he ran home, rallied everyone around it, cafe managers, owners, business, individuals, everyone rated, like, how much more do we need to sell? Like, it just went gun-ho. And we ended up, I think, selling, you know, in the space of 24 hours, like 750 kilos, some stupid amount of coffee, which was supposed to be unachievable.
That's amazing.
Obviously, I had lost, and it was a Christmas brand called, you know, Christmas Pud. So it was like, you know, you have to get 2 Pud, 2 good, or something related to pudding on there, like Viva la Pud or something like that. And then not only that, but the public got to vote on what it was. So it ended up, thankfully, there was one which is this horrible hand-drawn, like shitty tat thing, which almost won. But we had a nice Tommy Rathmiller, like one of the employees, like designed this beautiful thing that won. But on the top of my foot, I have a big Christmas pudding with the slogan, Viva la Pud. which is everyone always wonders. I remember the tattoo guy being like, "Oh, this is your first tattoo. Like, why the hell are you putting it on your top of your foot?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't really want it to be seen." And then he read it and he saw what it said, and he just pissed himself the entire 2 hours that he was doing it, and just kept on yelling "Viva la Poud." It was yeah.
That's
But
amazing.
lesson to people. Lesson to people. Think before you make a bet with Jordan.
Exactly. Oh my gosh, that is amazing. Yeah. So we had Jordan on a few weeks ago, and he actually told the story from his perspective. So I said to him that we would be having a chat at some point, and looking forward to getting your take on it. That is just incredible. Oh man, it sounds like you guys probably have an amazing culture at Ona, and yeah, I believe there's some. I don't know. Jordan was telling me about some signage that he put up one year, like some random sign that he bets is still probably up in the roastery somewhere, because it's just like such a fun culture. Like no one really cares. It's obviously everyone's working really hard, but it's also fun.
I think the important thing is if you demand a high level of output and quality, it's very important that you consider culture and staff happiness as well. You know, if you make that little bit of extra effort to make sure people are in an inspiring and comfortable and considerate workspace, you know, one, you'll have great retention, but two, you'll just have people who perform at the level that you want. So like definitely making sure it's a fun workspace, like, and you know, while you're working you're serious, but outside you're friends and friendly, and you know, putting that conscious effort is definitely a recommendation, as well as considering, you know, where people will go in the future and growth plan within the company. I think that one thing which amazes a lot of people is we've had a lot of competitors do really well in competition, part of Ona, and almost all of them have either moved to a sister company or still retained within the company. And everyone's always questioned, normally when someone does well, that's their ticket out, that now I'm a celebrity, I'm going to go and do my own thing. But at least for us, it's like respecting, like we're better together than we ever are as a independent individual. I have a set of skill sets which contributes one thing. Hugh might have a set of skill sets which contributes another, you know, Sash another, and we actually are stronger and can achieve more together. So we've been making the conscious effort to make sure that we can try and, you know, retain everyone in one happy space that works for lifestyle and growth and, you know, aspirations, as well as it does for the company.
That's amazing. It's actually one of the first questions I asked Jordan when I got to know him was, how has Ona managed to retain such an incredible, talented team for such a long time? And he points to the fact that if he hadn't left Australia to marry Nicole, he'd probably still be working at Ona or at one of the sister companies. And it is truly staggering to me, because the first thing that comes to mind from an outside perspective is, people must be making a lot more money than they can get elsewhere. And he kind of said to me that, yeah, maybe, but that's not really the reason that people stay. It just, to me, it comes across as if there's a much greater purpose than just the day-to-day work. There's this sense that you guys are doing something that's making a difference, and it's really admirable. I hope to be able to mirror and do something similar with my little company as it grows.
Yeah, 100%. I've always said from the day one, like I'm a pretty emotional or passionate driven person. I've always said to people like Sash, if I don't believe in what I'm doing when I wake up in the morning, I'll stop doing it. Like I'm not going to do something just because it pays the bills or it's successful. Like I do with it and I stay with it, not because we're growing or we're improving, but because I genuinely love it or believe the message that we're trying to address. And I believe the core fundamental of what the business stands for. And if I don't believe in that, then, you know, why at the end of the day, like, as you said, we've achieved what we need to individually in coffee. You could always go and do that. But I've always believed, like, as long as I believe in it and we're doing it for the right reasons, or at least I believe what I'm doing is for the right reasons within the company, then I'll continue to be there. And I think a lot of people share that sentiment.
Yeah, that's so cool, Sam. I really have so much respect for what you're doing and what the whole team is doing and has done for the industry. And we're all, as specialty coffee professionals, we're all benefiting from the work that you've done over the last 15 years, man. So thank you.
My pleasure.
Yeah, man.
As I said, I don't think I do a lot. It's like everyone, this is the thing, looks at it like, oh, like what I've done, like I would have done it whether I was known or not known in coffee. I've been blessed that I've done a few things that people know who I am, but I don't do it for those reasons. I do it because of the love of the product that we serve over. As you said, I would prefer to be, no one knows who I am. I'm this little person who retreats back into the bushes as soon as I finish what I need to. Like I've never wanted to have any acknowledgement. I just want to make the product better for everyone.
That's so cool. That is really, really awesome. Sam, I thank you for your time, man. I don't want to take up your whole day. It's been amazing to speak to you.
All good.
I think to close off, man, I need to ask you that you've got a reputation. I've heard this from so many coffee professionals that you, when it comes to flavor and specifically memory of flavor, you are a bit of a savant, and you can recall flavor notes from a wine that you tasted back in 2008, and with incredible detail. If you had to look back on those memories over the last couple of decades of tasting wines and coffees, is there a single wine and a single coffee that you would point out as your absolute favorite?
Yeah, I can say coffee-wise is easy because still to this day I've never had a better coffee. The Finca Deborah lot that Kelly and myself processed in 2017 for our both respective competitions. Or actually my lot, because Kelly processed a lot that was not successful. It was terrible. But we did two lots when we were there at the farm with Jamison, from a specific parcel in Finca Deborah. Obviously whole cherry carbonic washed process. We did it ourselves for the entire 6 days, and then obviously left it on the beds with Jay. That to date is still the most memorable coffee experience of excellence that I'm always aspiring to get close to.
Wow.
So it's just one of those things, just the jelly-like texture, the aroma, the complexity, the style will be, to me, at least in my mind, the pinnacle of excellence in coffee.
Wow.
When it comes to wine, it's a much more tougher thing, because as it's kind of like coffee varieties, it's like there's so many different styles that you can enjoy that are super memorable. My absolute, if as I said that I love washed coffees, my absolute, as much as I normally drink white wine now, I'm still a big fan of very old Bordeaux. I know from a young age that majority of my collection was in Bordeaux from the 50s to the late 90s, is right when I think winemaking was at its best. It's a style of wine that cannot be made really again, because it's very fruit forward, high acid, but also very low alcohol, which the current climate doesn't allow producers to make, but super long lived. I would have to say one of the many wines that I've enjoyed on my birthday, I generally do an 86 or something like that, from Bordeaux would definitely be a wine of memory for me, that it's just a comfort every time I get to experience something with that much history, and that was made sometimes before I was born, that I appreciate as my favorite taste, just, and seeing how, wow, like what they'd done in that time frame, and just respect to the producers and product of what they'd grown agriculturally, as well as the skills that have gone into producing something that is 40 years old or 30 years old is my style. That it would be one of those.
Wow.
I could lift off you a whole bunch of producers, which I don't really need to, but I would say, yeah, in a nutshell, it would be one of those that has that beautiful tertiary notes of, sweet tobacco, leather, cassis. It has like a nice cigar-ash kind of complexity mixed in with raspberry, cherry, like plum. Like that style of profile to me is just intoxicating and hedonistic and just beautiful. It's just got something warming about it that whenever I get to try a wine like that, whether it's, an old Bordeaux or even some old Australian wines that are made in that style, definitely is something of a real pleasure and a treat.
Wow, Sam, you've left me with a massive smile on my face and goosebumps when you describe that wine. I hope to taste something of that quality in the future, man. That is absolutely incredible.
You just need to do a Euro trip, and we'll take you to the vineyards. We can cup coffee during the day and swirl glasses at night.
Oh my gosh, I'm going to hold you to that, man. Oh my goodness, I'd love to do that. That would be absolutely incredible. I was just about to say, like, I look forward to catching up in person somewhere around the world, but I think, a wine and coffee tour around Europe sounds like the perfect place.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, perfect.
Amazing.
I'll leave you with one last question. What's your tip for next year's WSL? Who's got it?
Oh,
who's your boy?
Jeepers. That is such a good question. I think, if the finish, I haven't looked at the schedule. If the finales are at Trestles again, it's going to be so hard to go past Felipe. I just think that wave is just so well suited to him. But someone who I'd love to see win next year or very soon would actually be Griffin. I just love his style of surfing, and something one of his coaches said a few years ago has just stuck with me. They said that he's just a sponge, like he just absorbs all the information given to him and then is very calculated around what he's going to take on board and what he doesn't. And I think when someone's so freakishly talented and is thinking about what he's doing to that level, he's got a magic formula going. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, of course. I'm always a dreamer. My hope is to see John make it through a season without getting injured.
Yeah, that would be
amazing.
I
think that if he had the chance to get there, it'd be great. But I'm always a Gabby Medina fan. I love that man. I think he's a good human, and when he's on, he's on. And he's just been obviously finding back to form, jumping back on the tour. But I would love to see him surf well.
Jeez, regardless of how it shapes up, the coming year is going to be probably one of the most competitive ever. The new crop of Californian surfers on tour and the Brazilians who are just always on form. And as you said, if John can string it all together, it's going to be amazing to watch.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Awesome, man.
Dude, Sam, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it. And I feel very honored to be the first podcast you featured on. And yeah, man, you're a legend.
Yeah. You'll probably be the first and only. As I said, I only did it because of the Hugh, when Jordan shared with me the Hugh Kelly podcast and how your friend was so nervous to meet him. I was like, this is funny. And then after the meeting, I'm like, look, I've strung you along enough. I'll do it. But
amazing.
You'll get the exclusive.
Epic. Yeah. I love it, man.
But I'm sorry if I spoke too much.
No.
I know that I chatted there for a bit.
I could keep going for hours. I could pick your brain about roasting in a way that you wouldn't believe, and probably a bunch of information that we couldn't share on a podcast. So
yeah, exactly.
Amazing.
Awesome.
Cool. Well, Sam, we'll chat soon.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
Same to you. Ciao.
Ciao. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Coffee Made Me Do It podcast. Sam Corra is an absolute legend of our industry, and I was so fortunate to have this time to chat with him. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please share it with your friends. We are trying to grow this platform and to share these amazing stories of amazing coffee professionals with as wide an audience as possible. Please give this podcast a 5-star, and we'll see you in the next one. Ciao.